Okay, guys. Today we're going to be talking about the Ming Dynasty. These last couple items on this gunpowder empire. We will look at the Qing Dynasty and Japan in the next video or lecture, depending on what happens with the weather. But we're talking about the Ming Dynasty. Now, a couple things here that you need to understand. Hopefully, this video will allow you to go at your own pace. You'll be able to pause it. I know that you all write your notes at a different pace. So hopefully this will allow you to go at your own pace. So not going to spend a whole lot of time trying to give writing time. I'm going to trust that you can pause things when you need to. So as we're going to go through this will be a little quicker than your typical lecture in class because we won't have the dead time for writing. So I'm going to trust that you can pause things and go at your own pace. And this is going to be hopefully a great way for us to keep up as that test date is looming on us. So let's go ahead and get. All right, so you've got the Yuan dynasty. This is the last of the Mongol dynasties to hold on. But the Mongol Yuan dynasty is overthrown by the Ming dynasty. It was established in 1368 to 1644, as you see. The first Ming emperor was Hong Wu. Now, let's look back. Let's think back to the Mongol rule in the Yuan dynasty. Now, if you remember from talking about the Yuan dynasty, the Mongols weren't about all things China. In fact, they sort of separated themselves. They weren't allowed to intermarry. They didn't settle in Chinese cities. They just kind of took it over. Mongols were in the bureaucracy, or other people would be brought in bureaucracy. Forget about Confucianism. So now we've got the Ming Dynasty, and you're going to see a shift back to traditional Chinese principles. You're going to see a shift back to making China China. And Hong Wu will lead that. He led a successful peasant revolt against the Yuan, obviously because they believed the Yuan had lost the mandate of heaven. So you have that whole dynastic cycle, the gaining, the losing of the mandate of heaven, and of course our old friend peasant revolts. And so we established the Ming Dynasty. Wu instituted an absolute monarchy. Now, this monarchy was very comparable to Louis XIV's absolute monarchy in France. He distrusted nobles. He distrusted scholars because, rich, powerful, smart, all tend to be competition for an emperor, for an absolute monarch or an absolute emperor. He forced nobles to live in his court and participated in rituals signifying its divinity. If he could establish himself as divine, then the people, because it's not nobles and scholars, remember, that's they may make policy, they may run the place, but ultimately it's the people, because China, if it's not taught us anything this year, it's taught us that if you oppress your people long enough, then they're going to revolt, and they're going to overthrow you. So Wu's idea is to put the nobles in his pocket, make sure that he can keep an eye on them. Then you have a very important emperor that comes about, the Yongle Emperor. Now, the Yongle Emperor may be one of, if not the most significant of the Ming, probably not the most, but probably one of the most significant Ming emperors. One of the big things that he did is he moves the capital to Beijing. Now, if you've ever seen pictures of China, if you've ever seen Tiananmen Square, we all, at some point in time, have seen a video of what we call Tank Man, and we'll talk about Tank Man later. The man who stands in front of the military tanks in Tiananmen Square. You've got the Tiananmen Square massacre. All these things are historical things that happen in China that we've heard about. That happens around a place called the Forbidden City. And the Yongle Emperor is responsible for building the Forbidden City in Beijing. It's the big red building that if you've seen pictures of communist China, then you have seen pictures of the Forbidden City. This is indeed an important landmark for China. It becomes the emperor's palace, basically, for the Yongle emperor and future Ming emperors. In fact, here's what it looks like. This is what the Forbidden City looks like. That big red building, very iconic. That sort of that pagoda shape building on top of the square, but very iconic as far as Chinese history goes. If you've seen pictures of Chinese history, anything to do with government, you've seen the Forbidden City. So that was created or built by the Yongle Emperor. One of the things the Ming did for this was reinstituting and improving the civil service system. Now, one of the reasons why these lectures are going to be so much shorter than in class is because we can't have the question-answer dialogue, the discussion dialogue. But because it's at this point in time that I would ask you to kind of rehash what the civil service system is. So whether you pause this thing and try to figure it out or look up your notes, you need to refamiliarize yourself with traditional Chinese customs and cultures. Here in time period 4, we've kind of gotten away from China. We've told, I've said over and over and over that China is the landmark. It is the hallmark of AP World History for a very long time. So go back, make sure that you have familiarized yourself with Chinese history, with your traditional things of Chinese culture, such as merchants aren't seen very high, Confucian values, civil service exams. So here we have the Ming reinstituting the civil service system post-Mongol rule. They established a 3-part exam held at district, provincial, and imperial levels. So you were looking at a tougher exam than the past. In fact, only 90 people pass this exam per year. It's almost as if they've bell curved it or curved it to the point where they're only going to allow a certain number of people to pass. You're going to experience this kind of examination system at the end of the year when you take the AP exam. Like it or not, and I don't like it, but like it or not, the AP exam is designed for approximately 50% to pass and 50% to fail. I think last year we had the nation had a 52 or 53% pass rate. And so those exams are designed to take the best of the best, and they are willing to shift the criteria to make sure that only a certain amount of people pass. Of course, the Ming are going to support Confucian ideals. Now, again, be familiar with Confucian ideals. This is going to be a theme throughout the year. The idea of proper place in society, societal order, 5 key relationships. Your advancement was based off of merit and competence. Okay, so it was not who your daddy was. It was not how much money you make. It was based off of your competence and your abilities. So you did see, now obviously the richer people are going to have a better opportunity for advancement because they have the money to get education, whereas the poor people are relying upon basically God-given intelligence and what schooling and what education they can get on the farm. So obviously your people who are better off financially are going to have a better shot at passing these tests. But you do have, on the occasion, you have some poor people who really advance their stage in life in the social hierarchy because of their ability to pass this exam. They believed in orderly hierarchy with respect to authority. Again, Confucian ideals right here. But the Ming did not tolerate dissent, and only those loyal to the Ming passed. So if you're an opinionated person, and we've got plenty of opinionated people in our class, you had to be loyal to the system. So that would be, in essence, like you are very talented, you're very smart, you know a lot, but you aren't my biggest fan, and so you regularly are outspoken against me. And I decide you don't get to pass because you're not loyal to me. That's what the Ming did here. You can be the smartest person in China, but if you were not loyal to the Ming, you were not passing that civil service exam. So there is something to say there for loyalty as well. So what you're seeing here right now is you're seeing a establishment of China being China. They've spent this whole time they have spent under Mongol rule, and they've gotten away. They've been forced away really from being able to be who they've been their entire existence. And the Ming is part of that reestablishment. Pardon the pause, I had to cough. The Yongle Emperor of the Ming began a series of naval expeditions. Now, this is something that we have talked about. This is a person we have talked about. This is something that we have led up to, and you've seen crash course videos on, and now we finally get to talk about it. The Yongle Emperor of the Ming is responsible for the voyages of Zheng He. The Yongle Emperor's curious. He liked exotic goods. He wanted to expand trade. He wanted to not only see what else was out there, but he wanted people to see just how much stuff, just how many great items China had. This was as much of a exploration voyage as it was a flaunting voyage of look at what we have in China. So he commissions 7 expeditions by Zheng He and creates the largest navy the world has ever seen. These ships are massive, and there's a lot of them. And we're going to go in here in a minute. We'll talk about why, when we start talking about the great navies of the world throughout this time period, throughout the class, why we never mention China's navy. Well, we'll get to that here in just a second. In fact, I will probably send a link out to a YouTube video that is on China's engineering and empire that talks about these ships and Zheng He's voyages. They're just phenomenal. But the Yongle Emperor was curious. He wanted to see what's out there, what is other people doing, what does other people have. But he also really, really, really wanted to flaunt what he had. This was, as I said, as much a marketing expedition as it was a discovery expedition, because he's going to take these goods out, and he's not looking for stuff. He's looking to show people what he has, and he is going to attract a lot of attention. He's going to attract a lot of attention from Europe. He's going to attract a lot of attention from South Asia and the Middle East. And they're all going to see all this stuff that the Chinese have, and they're all going to be fighting for a chance to purchase those items. During this time in Europe, Portugal is swinging around in India and Southeast Asia looking for their trade ports. You know, they were in India for a little while before they were kicked out by Britain in Bengal. And Portugal is going to find itself a place in the Philippines, Manila. And that's going to be a lucrative trade port for them. The Spanish are going to eventually start using Manila as a trade outlet to the Chinese. And we're going to see Europe really try to get into trade with China. they've had to, because of the Ottomans rising and the Russian Empire rising, they've been forced, and because of the Mughals, they've been forced to find a way around the Middle East as far as trade goes, because everything's going through them, and it's a kind of a somewhat volatile situation between the Ottomans and the Russians, as we'll see later. But they're constantly exploring the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean because they're trying to find ways around the Middle East for trade. They're trying to get to China. So Young Emperor commissions these 7 voyages of Zheng He to go out to trade, get a good idea of what's out there, but really to flaunt what China has and bring that trade market to China. So Zheng He, first of all, you need to understand that Zheng He was Muslim. He was a Muslim slave eunuch. I laughed I laughed with my wife over the fact that this time period really talks a lot about eunuchs. But it is what it is, and the idea of making men eunuchs was very political and very strategical. So Zheng He was actually a slave to the Chinese government. He was Muslim and he was a eunuch. So he is going to lead, and he is probably the most famous navigator you've never heard about until this class period, or until this class. Zheng He leads expeditions to Ceylon, Calcutta, South Vietnam, and Africa. Um, he commands, as you can see, 60 vessels and 500 troops. And these vessels were huge. They're far bigger and faster than anything the Portuguese have. They're 400 feet long, 500 tons. And shift, um, as we start shifting to talking about Columbus, as Columbus comes over, you're going to see how badly I think of the next slide or the slide after, how badly these ships dwarf anything the Europeans have got so far. But it was an expedition of exploration, um, or not exploration, but it was cruises, like I said, to flaunt what they had and see just what's out there. It's not the fact that they need to explore new lands. They're not going anywhere. They just want to kind of see what goods are floating out there and flaunt what they have. He brings back zebras, ostriches, and tributes. When you have that much power and you have that much riches, it's people are going to come and pay homage and see what you have and try to buddy up with you and try to schmooze you to trade with them. They often, other leaders who are wanting to trade with the Chinese are often forced to perform the kowtow. Um, if you don't know what a kowtow is, if we were in class, I would demonstrate it to you. But it's sort of a bowing as you back away, never making eye contact with the ruler. But you can look it up. Just look up Chinese kowtow, and it'll and you can probably see what it is. It's a sign of reverence to a very powerful and rich leader, and that's what China was. So he brings back these tributes. Like I said, these expeditions were more cruises in search of interesting things, not exploration. They're not interested in exploring. They already know what's out there. They're not interested in new colonization lands. This is still China that we're talking about. So um, I ask a question here. Why was China not exploring and colonizing? Why are they not getting into um, the same uh, game that Europe is? And the answer to that is the fact that they don't have to. Europe is looking for new stuff. Europe is looking for goods that can get them involved in the trade with China. They're looking for new lands to rule. If you recall, we talked about this a little bit, that the Europeans are using a mercantilism as their means of gaining wealth. China does not need that. They're already top dog. They don't have a care in the world about colonizing or controlling someone else. They have everything they need. Um, it's at Christmas. People ask each other all the time, what do you get the person for Christmas? What do you get them for their birthday? The person who has everything? What do you buy them? What do you get them? What's the gift? And that's sort of where China is. You know, they're not exploring, they're not colonizing because they don't have to. They don't. Um, they don't need anything. They have everything they want, and everybody wants what they have. So why go out to them when they're going to come to you? So you need to understand that China's economy is top dog right here. As you see, the big ship in the back is the flagship of Zhenghe, which is approximately 400 feet in length. And then you have um, in front the black ship, and let me see if I can point this out. Let me get the pen tool. I'm gonna get fancy here. So this is Zhenghe's ship. This ship right here is the Santa Maria, Columbus's Santa Maria ship, and that's a two-scale comparison. In fact, if you flipped Columbus's ship, it would fit on width-wise on Zhenghe's ship. So we're talking about a massive, 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 massive ship compared to the European fleets. And there is Zhenghe there on the right. As I said, the Chinese economy was booming. Helping this is new American crops. Most specifically the sweet potato. You have sweet potato, you have maize, peanuts are coming over from the New World. And what this does is it expands available calories. And as you know, our equation is what? Right. More food equals more people. When you have more available calories, your population is going to grow. Now, for China, that may or may not be a good thing because they go from 100 million people in 1500 to 225 million people in just 250 years. They more than double themselves. Um, and we all know that population is an issue for China today. But one of the biggest reasons for this is they have two of the most caloric sustaining crops. Once the New World introduces the sweet potato to China, you pair that with rice, and you've got a lot of calories available to feed your people. The sweet potato is the big focus. Of course, you have maize, you have peanuts, which also play a huge role in the caloric intake of the Chinese. But the sweet potato is something that the poor, especially, could grab a hold of, could get up, could grow, could help sustain them. It never takes the place of rice. You need to understand that rice is always going to be the main staple in Chinese economy and Chinese nutrition. But the sweet potato is going to become huge in China. Talking with one of my former Chinese students that most of y'all probably know, she says that the sweet potato is still a very big deal in China. So the sweet potato, new American crops, expand the agriculture of China and lead to, of course, more available calories, which leads to more people. This population growth aided manufacturing by keeping wages low. Okay, so there was a limited need for labor-saving devices. Now, the great thing about technology is technology is put into place to increase production and make the workload easier. For example, we use the cotton gin in 19th century America. When the cotton gin comes in, You have it's a labor-saving device, and it increases production. You have this population growth aided manufacturing. It keeps wages low, which means you make more money because there is a limited need for labor-saving devices. You don't need these labor-saving devices because you have a ton of workers. So thanks to having a ton of workers, you have no need to create labor-saving devices. As we mentioned before, they launched expeditions into the Indian Ocean with the Zheng He voyages. They did limit trade with the Europeans. They opened two ports. China opened two ports to the Europeans, Macau and Canton. All right. These two ports would be the only access that Europeans would have to China. China is still China. China still likes its privacy, likes its isolationism, and it's going to expand that even further after the Yongle Emperor is dead. But they completely limit trade with Europeans to Macau and Canton. Now, the Spanish are going to take advantage of that. The Portuguese are going to take advantage of that, especially sitting there in the Philippines. But those two trade ports are it. And the big thing that boosts the Ming economy is silver. Okay, so we've talked about the fact that we discovered all of this silver in South America. The Spanish have all of the silver. The Portuguese are getting their hands on silver, and that is the one item that China really likes that the Europeans have that they don't. They don't have silver in China, so they're willing to part with their high-priced, very well-made goods that everybody wants for that silver. And so China actually becomes what historians call the silver sink. Silver just starts pouring into China as Europeans, Spanish, Portuguese especially, and eventually Britain, as these European nations start pouring their silver right down the drain of China so that they can purchase Chinese goods. And that's the big deal here. This allows Europe to get a hold of these Chinese products, and they're willing to pay their silver for it. And China just absolutely devours all of this silver and becomes the silver sink. Now, having said that, Britain will find a way, and we'll talk about this next time period. Britain will find a way to reverse that. When they start introducing opium to China, and then China starts pouring out silver, Britain's like, sure, we'll give you some opium. Britain's sitting over there in control of India, and they've got all the opium that they could ever possibly need. And yeah, we've got Indian opium here, and we only really want silver for it. So China starts, paying for their dope. They start getting them. So Britain breaks in, reverses the silver sink by basically getting China high on opium. So we'll see that reversal next time period. The Ming society strengthened traditional Chinese values. Again, we're going back to China being China. Filial piety. Okay, refresh your memory on that. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Filial piety. If you don't know what it is, you go back to your Chinese notes and you figure out, and go back to the Confucian section. You figure out what filial piety is. Okay, that's something you need to know at a moment's notice. Extended family system. Okay, we remember the Mulan and ancestor veneration. Well, the extended family system is how all that works before they're dead. So it emphasized loyalty to family. One of the things about China that a lot of people don't know is that in China, your last name comes first. So it would not be Keith Jones. It would be Jones Keith. Because in China, your family name is more important than your name. So your family name, your family heritage, your family reputation is far more important than you are. You have an obligation to uphold that family name, to uphold those traditions, to uphold those values, and you are severely punished if you dishonor your family's name. So this extended family system emphasizes loyalty to family. Females, of course, this is China, so this is Confucianism, Confucian social hierarchy. So females remain subordinate. Foot binding continues. Now, the Mongol women did not participate in this, but the Chinese women, and then now under the Ming, foot binding continues as a way of, for lack of a better way to put it, crippling women into submission, into a subservient role. Female infanticide was not uncommon. If you are having kids and you produce females, hey, there's a good chance, or not, there's a chance, I don't know how good it is at this point in time, but there's a chance that you're going to get rid of that female. You're going to take the female out and you dump it in the woods, you're going to kill her, because of the emphasis on male heirs, on males in society. Now, great, for women, right? Unfortunately, this is not some story. It is fact, and they will deal with female infanticide for a long time. Even now, for a long time you have the one-child policy in China, which they still have technically, but you can pay a fee to have another child. But most families in China are one-child families. Because of population. And there was a point in time in Chinese history where if you're a one-child family and you're having girls, sometimes you killed the girls so you'd have a chance to have another kid and hopefully get a boy. Widows were discouraged from remarrying, and widow suicide was not just common, it was often encouraged, which is just, unfathomable today, but widow suicide was often encouraged in the Ming Dynasty. And of course, Ming culture. In Ming culture, you have the promotion of Neo-Confucianism, the emphasization on Chinese traditions, bringing China back to who China was. You have literature. Monkey, The Water, Margin, etc. Are all famous works. Pottery, and of course, the big cultural, architectural thing that comes out of the Ming Dynasty is the Great Wall. Now, we've been talking about the Great Wall since the Qin Dynasty, but the wall that you know today, the wall that you see today in pictures, the wall that at some point in time in my life I hope to visit. The wall that you see, the picture down there at the bottom, that was built. That part of the wall and that structure and that infrastructure of the wall was built by the Ming Dynasty, or started by the Ming Dynasty. It'll be, of course, completed with the Manchu Dynasty and further projects. But the wall that you know today was brought to us by the Ming Dynasty. Okay. Finish up. The fall of the Ming, internal economic collapse, the flow of silver in Ming tax policies. When you have that much silver flowing into your economy, you're going to deal with inflation. You're going to deal with a tax policy that is burdensome to the peasants. All this silver is flowing into the country, but the peasants are not the ones getting the silver. And so the Ming start taxing them, trying to get silver coins, trying to use money instead of crops like they used to, and it's just not available. And so you have a severe oppression of the peasant population. Same mistakes that every dynasty's been making for thousands of years now. You have disruption of trade, extravagant lifestyles of the imperial family, all things that we talked about, with Grand Canal stuff. You have the declining efficiency of the government, a series of famines in the early century proved to be very catastrophic for the Ming Dynasty. And of course, all of these hardships are going to lead to our old Chinese friend, peasant revolts. And these peasant revolts are going to actually weaken the Ming Dynasty to allow for external invasions to come about. You're going to have invaders from the north, the Manchu. The Manchu dynasty, or the Manchu invaders, are going to come in because of a weakened Ming Dynasty and easily defeat the Ming. Of course, the peasants are going to believe that the Manchu now have garnered the mandate of heaven, and so because especially since the Ming were so easily defeated. And you're going to have the establishment of the longest reigning dynasty of all the dynasties, and that is the Qing dynasty, often called the Manchu dynasty, which is going to establish itself in 1644, and it will be the final dynasty in Chinese history. It will last all the way to 1912, when you have the ultimate revolt. The Republic Revolt, which will eventually give us the People's Republic of China. That revolt will be led by a man named Sun Yat-sen. And as China transitions out of a dynastic to a republic form of government, and then eventually Mao Zedong will come in and establish the communist country that China has morphed into today. But the Manchu will come in, establish a near 300-year reign in Chinese history. One of the things, side notes about the Zheng He, after the Yongle Emperor dies, all voyages and connections with the outside world was cut off. That massive naval fleet destroyed. They lit it up. They lit all of them on fire and destroyed that entire fleet. And China will start going back to its traditional isolation policies. So there you have it. That is our overview of our look at the Ming Dynasty as far as a gunpowder empire. Of course, gunpowder playing. I didn't mention gunpowder in this video, but gunpowder being the primary way of which these dynasties stayed in command with guns and stuff. So hopefully this will be helpful to keep us going and keep us on task as far as getting through to the end. If we have future snow days, and I'll probably start using these a little more often so that I can say, hey, go watch this video on the information, and then we can talk about different things and work on different skills in class together. So that is it, and that is the Ming Dynasty. If we have another snow day, then I will put up another video on the Qing and Japan. So until then, have a good one, guys.